Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Eric Toring. I'm the Senior Vice President for the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine. And I want to welcome you to tonight's webinar. We've got a esteemed panel of veterinarians that are going to talk to you a little bit tonight about industry and commercial veterinary opportunities. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Kristen Vole, who is the chair of the ACVPM Partners Committee, for a brief introduction, and then we'll get started with the webinar.
Thanks, Dr. Turing. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm really glad to have you on here tonight, and especially thanks to our panelists that are joining us. We're hoping to do these webinars on different career options throughout on a more regular basis. So hopefully once a month, once every other month. So look for those announcements. Wanted to briefly say that Dr. Christina Stafford with Elanco Animal Health wasn't able to be with us here tonight, but her slides will be included in the PowerPoint that is sent out when you get the announcement about the video being ready. So her contact information is on there. And if you have any questions about her slides, feel free to contact her. And with that, I will turn it over to our first panelist, Dr. Kavishti Kokkaram. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you.
All right. So good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Kavishti Kokkaram. I am a technical services veterinarian for the Western region for a relatively new animal health company called Animal Health Vision. Brief background on myself. I have a degree in marine biology from the University of Maine, graduated vet school at Tufts University. I'm one of the more recent diplomates of the ACVPM of this year. I have had over 14 years of clinical private practice, practicing in two fairly large practices, given the regions, predominantly focusing on food animal medicine. Both practices I was at were all, about 96% dairy practice. They practice in Northwestern Vermont, Northeastern New York. I kind of refer to as mostly Canada. I left there after 5 years and became a practice owner and began running the diagnostic lab at Lander Veterinary Clinic in California. So for those of you who have spent time in California in dairy practice and visited that practice, may be familiar with that practice. It's in the Central Valley of California. And then somewhere along the lines when the dairy economy took a little bit of a downturn, we decided to divest, and I became one of the lead vets at a low-cost spay-neuter clinic that Lander opened. While I was at Lander, one of my additional sort of things I did was I led the development of a couple subspecialties that still exist there, dealing predominantly with calf health, milk quality, and then sanitation assessments and biosecurity on farm. Then in May of this year, I decided to make a shift. So I guess what makes a vet that spends most of his time doing this decide to give it up in exchange for, so basically I haven't really changed much of my my days. Start off looking predominantly the same as they did the last 15 years. I still spend a lot of time with dairy cattle, predominantly dealing with transition cows, consulting on milk quality and calf health and replacement heifers on various dairies in California, Texas, and Kansas, Colorado, and Idaho. So here's a couple. So if I'm not walking transition cows in the morning with the hospital guys, I'm usually in a barn, either walking calves or looking at milk cows in the parlor, assessing, looking at risk mitigation and assessing risk on that farm, making protocol changes that are in alignment with their management strategies. At least that's what I try to do. And every once in a while, I get to have some fun with some random goats. So as far as a background on the company that I work for, AHV International, as I mentioned, is a relatively new company. It's been in existence since 2014. It's a Dutch company started by a Dutch veterinarian predominant mission and goal is to empower farmers through the innovation of animal health and to basically establish a high quality and healthy dairy food supply, utilizing the principles of quorum sensing. Quorum sensing itself is, I would say, a relatively new technology in the grand scheme of things, as its inception, or I guess the way they've identified bacteria communicate was essentially identified back in the 70s, and we've been playing with it since. It's only been recently introduced into the animal health industry as a sort of alternative to antibiotics. So it's an antimicrobial that's not an antibiotic. As far as opportunities with animal health vision, internally, we have several tech service positions which are available nationally and internationally right now, as the company is rapidly expanding in several countries, soon to come to New Zealand. So if folks are interested in New Zealand, that's one opportunity that you can endeavor to look into. Overall, the portfolio covers udder health, uterine health, calf health, and transition cow support, both on the energy and ketosis treatment, as well as in the addressing subclinical hypocalcemia. So as far as what I do on a daily basis, I directly provide tech support to a national sales team and national farm advisors. As far as my direct role in the West, I have 12 farm advisors in 10 different states with two marketing advisors and various sales managers in those areas, focusing, I guess I mentioned, the milk quality, transition cows, and replacement heifers. I do a fair bit of on-farm training, maintaining standard protocols on that farm, and then helping to generate custom protocols for various strategic accounts that we have in those states. The company was launched in California, and given the size of our dairies here, I have sort of been entrusted with the role of helping to conduct and facilitate field trials and studies here in California that are being used for a larger international audience, utilizing our products on farm. And then I also do a certain degree of regional support for new product implementation and protocol generation outside of the West. So while my territory is technically the West, because my area of, I guess, expertise is a fair bit of milk quality and replacement heifer health, my territory, those lines get a little blurred. And so I travel nationally on demand, I guess, so to speak. There we go. So advice for getting into this field as far as making that transition from private practice into the world of industry. One of the things I've learned is that you really do have to be a jack of all trades and probably a master of a few of them. So in terms of my background, I have a fair bit of expertise in a variety of areas in animal health, specifically food animal practice. But my area of expertise really is calf health, milk quality, and then sanitation and biosecurity management on farms. Because of that sort of role and the unique sort of niche that I kind of served for the last 9 years, it basically facilitated this transition into this role here with AHV. The other option, I guess, advice I would give anybody thinking about this is to try to keep your options open. When opportunities present themselves, you really do want to try to take advantage of any opportunity that sits in your lap. Several of these companies are looking for individuals right now, especially individuals who have a demonstrated specialty in the area, whether that be ACVPM board certification, ACVPM, MPH, MBA, ABVP board certification, definitely goes a long way to facilitating your credentials as well as putting you forward in this industry. I know several of my colleagues have multiple board certifications, which is kind of interesting. Also, as far as travel, that is a definite thing, I guess, that I myself didn't quite fully comprehend before I jumped into this world. When I was hired, my travel was projected to be about 25%, and I was only supposed to be in California, Arizona, Nevada. Within 4 months of my hire, we restructured, and I suddenly had all of the West. And so now I travel at least 50% of the time with this company, which most days I enjoy. I like meeting new folks, so it facilitates that. However, this is a very large area to cover. So right now we've only have 3 tech service veterinarians in our company, soon to add 2 more. But until they are added on, I have all of the West, which definitely does not look like just California anymore. Even though most of our dairies that we focus on our strategic accounts are in California and Kansas right now. My other advice would be is to really stay flexible. Change is inevitable in this industry. And as I've spoken to several of my colleagues, change will always happen. And being able to sort of adapt and mold yourself into a new niche is very essential to at least my role here with this company, and some of my colleagues have all mentioned the same. When I was hired, my role is predominantly as a tech service veterinarian. However, in the last 3 months, because of another restructure, I've also found myself managing the local sales team in California. So I've sort of embraced that responsibility, but it definitely has stretched my responsibilities, my daily responsibilities a little bit, having to refocus and look at trying to help the sales reps from a sales perspective and a managerial role rather than just as a tech service veterinarian providing support to them. This is not moving. There we go. As an aside, I guess, as further background on myself, I am a veterinary preventive medicine officer. I've been in the U.S. Army Reserves for the last 9 years. So on average weekend, I can usually be found doing one of these things. And I have definitely embraced that sort of opportunity to travel the world and see other areas of the world and get some additional experience, not only from a practice perspective, but also from a perspective of looking at other interactions with other agencies. There you go. And if I'm not spending my time in a nice green uniform, I can usually be found somewhere on a mountain slope or hiking somewhere with my kids. My little daughter believes that every weekend should be spent out in hiking somewhere. And my son sometimes begrudgingly will join her. Jeez. So contact information for myself. My folks can reach out to me either through my private email or through the company email, or even directly on my cell phone. As some of the sales reps will agree, I generally will take a phone call anytime, day or night. Anyone reaches out to me, I'm always willing to chat and help facilitate. So with that, I think I can pass it along to the next person.
Dr. Miller.
Hey, I'm Dr. Susan Miller. I graduated from Texas A&M in 1992. And many years later, find myself with Booz Allen Hamilton Incorporated as a senior analyst, more recently a senior policy analyst, which is not half as boring as it sounds. The easy question they asked was, how did you get into your current role? Simple question. In my case, a 20+ year answer that still continues. And I think it boils down to experiences and networking. I've been doing what I do now for a little over 10 years, which is actually the longest I've ever held a single position. So sort of a personal record there. I think every job offers a chance to fine tune old skills and gain new ones. And in my case, getting from C equals DVM to this point was kind of like getting a diagnosis of exclusion, you know, in that you successfully rule out everything else and then you find something else. The trick is, I think, to look at veterinary medicine as a very integrated science and yourself as a very integrated scientist. And you convey that in actions, words, writing, spanning from explaining an endocrinopathy to a client whose animal has an endocrinopathy and the client didn't even finish high school. If you can explain that, you can be a consultant. You know, those impromptu meetings at CE meetings and conventions back when we all went to those are opportunities too. And so you tie the experiences with the networking together. You know, after revising my own curriculum vitae and resume perhaps hundreds of times, and I think some of you have probably been there too, and the rest of you probably will get to that point, I can say that a couple of years in private practice exercises every skill set that's valued in these alternative roles that I've held and that I have now. Everything from analysis to zoonotics, it fits. So the experiences and the expertise on your resume can never remain static. I think everybody knows this, but from one job application to the next, you update that resume again, you tweak it a little further, you keep it a living document. It's fresh for each reader, each audience who might see it. And yeah, that means you have multiple versions and each one's tailored to the job at hand. And networking is a kind of dirty word, at least it used to be for me, until I realized that it's a key thing to do. And it's, of course, need not be limited to other veterinarians. And networking is a two-way process, of course. You know, you're never too junior to open a door or make a key introduction for someone else. And then, you know, what goes around, you know, comes around after a while. The great thing is that wherever I've been, I think veterinarians are universally liked. And we're liked enough to diffuse almost any high octane situation. I've had more than one non-veterinarian boss introduce me into a high stakes discussion by purposefully ending with the words, "and she's a veterinarian." Usually within just minutes, somebody who was on the offensive is telling me about his dog or his grandfather's farm, and I'll always be honored by that. You know, that's touching that it happens so often, and it is a wonderful thing. Long story short, I've had great jobs at the past, and I'm having a great time now. My previous experience was in the blue uniform with the Air Force. Started out in production agriculture, family farm and ranch. In veterinary school, I started working as a postdoctoral, or started working with research investigators. And upon graduation, I went to Cornell University and a postdoctoral research fellowship. That was awesome. And for a time, I thought I'd be a board certified anesthesiologist. Alas, that didn't happen, but it's all good anyway. After that, I went into mixed animal practice, which was probably the most fun I've ever had for a couple of years. And I think what happened there is a lot of our clients were veterans and they recruited me. I remember them mentioning that. And to a man, whether they had been in the Marines or the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, they said, "Doc, we think you ought to join the Air Force." So did that on active duty for a number of years and in the reserves. And once you get in the reserves, you have to have another job usually to pay the bills. And at that point, I became a GS, government employee with the Veterans Healthcare Administration as a research compliance officer. And one thing I realized is that once you've walked the walk as a research investigator, or even been a meaningful member of a research team, it isn't that hard to talk the talk to other investigators in the interest of better science, protection of human research subjects, laboratory animal welfare, and research lab safety. And so now as a senior policy analyst, I'm a contractor. So I work for one corporation while supporting another large company, government agency, or maybe someday a university. So as a result, there are at least two people to serve: my corporate boss and the client. And then I realized, well, that's not unlike private practice. If you're an associate and you don't own the practice, you have a boss veterinarian and you have the client in front of you who's your client at the moment. One thing I do wish I'd known before stepping into the realm of contracting is that in comparison to employment and government agencies or private practice, it is typical for the contract offered to you in this realm to have the phrase at will. And that means the company can let you go without notice. But the fair point is it also means you can leave without notice if you want to as well. And that's probably the main difference I've noticed as a newcomer when I started this a decade ago. Now, the word analyst is a simple and very broad job title, and it varies a bit throughout this industry. I know some colleagues of mine are consultants, some are called associates, and others have more specific job titles. With the disclaimer that I really enjoy talking to clients and I really like where I work, I'm not a recruiter for my firm, but this explains it. I'll not read it out loud to you, but we live to solve problems. And I thought, hey, veterinarians live to solve problems and we're not afraid of the unknown. Neither are veterinarians. And there's just a lot of work going on in a lot of areas. And at any time, we probably have single-digit numbers of veterinarians on the firm right now. And we're pretty popular. I'll just leave it at that. And if you're really curious and have some insomnia, there's the website about the firm and the way that the firm explains opportunities to newcomers. And contracting in general, the opportunities seem to span across academic, mostly universities, businesses, and that includes private ones, of course, government, state, even local, federal, and of course, support to the military is one of the bigger government entities. I guess the best advice for getting into this field is remember and project that as a veterinarian, you are intellectual capital. You're highly educated and you're an objective thinker, and that fits so many things, so many needs. We're security strategists, and not just for health security. You know, locally to globally, we all know a little bit about food security, and along with food security comes economic security. The two are very closely related. And some of us even have the skills it takes to support the national security strategy. We are multidisciplinary scientists, and I think everybody knows that we're not limited to one species, and that's a great thing. We are health risk assessors, and we can mitigate that risk in a lot of different arenas, in a lot of different situations. And of course, we're healthcare providers. And that may be the first thing that the other person thinks of when they meet you or interviewing you. And they might even further scope that down to thinking of the one species they know best. And that's a great starting point, but it does mean you need to be specific when you introduce yourself and when you're asked about the usual questions. You know, usually it's going to be about dog care. You bet. You can doctor a 2-pound dog, or you can take care of a 1,400-pound cow or a 60-gram budgie, but that's neither the beginning nor the end of what you do. And my email is Miller_Susan at BAH or BoozeAllenHamilton.com.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Dr. Karen Prost.
Thank you for the intro, Dr. Turing. So I'm Karen Prost. I am one of the few Canadians on the panel here, so I'm happy to be able to be here tonight. I'm the Companion Animal Vet Services Manager for CEVA Animal Health Canada, which is essentially the same job function as a technical services veterinarian in most other companies. They just have a different title here. And I am the only one for this company in all of Canada, so I have quite a large territory to cover. How did I get into my current role was actually through networking. So Dr. Miller kind of referenced that networking can almost be seen as a dirty word. And I certainly had that thought in the past, but every single position I've ever gotten or advancement or even discovering the ACVPM board exam was done through just reaching out to people and inquiring about what path they took to get there. So this position became known to me because I had made it very clear to some of my ACVPM study buddies that I was interested in getting out of clinical practice. When that happened, there was an opportunity that came up on a certain listserv for a Canadian vet services manager, and one of my buddies forwarded it to me. I was a little bit reluctant to apply because it did require industry experience in the past, and I did not have any. So if I have one big piece of advice other than networking, is certainly don't be afraid to apply for something, even if you might not meet every single qualification, because you would be surprised what your background and even your board certification or what you've done, your skill set can get you. I never in a million years would have thought that I would be in industry, but I've been here for about a year and I absolutely love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Prior experience, fairly short and limited, I think, compared to some of the other panelists here. I was in companion animal clinical practice for about 8 years. It was a 24-hour practice that was duly accredited in ER medicine in addition to general practice. So I had my hands in clinical practice for quite a few years. But at the same time, after finishing my master's in public health and epi, I also worked as a research assistant at Sunnybrook, which is a large human hospital in Toronto that is also affiliated with the University of Toronto. I practiced or I did research in a aerosolized viral lab. So I worked with a human doctor who had a very big interest in One Health and viruses of agricultural importance. So I got to do a few research projects using aerosol samplers in swine barns, got to have some experience there doing public speaking, writing papers, and just doing lab techniques. So I became very proficient in doing PCRs. I worked in a level 3 lab. So it provided me with a large amount of experience that clinical practice didn't. And I think it made me a more rounded clinician at the end of it, because I could understand what happened in the lab and in research itself. Thank you. So as a vet services manager or technical services veterinarian, probably the biggest part of my job involves technical training and support of my sales reps. So I am there when we are launching a new product to really give them all of the knowledge that they will need in the field. I'm also responsible for managing and facilitating relationships with what we call key opinion leaders. So for example, for our derm line of products, it's my responsibility to maintain a close relationship with a dermatologist, maintaining a relationship with the universities for potential collaborative work in the future. And I really enjoy this part of it. I mean, these are people whose names I, in practice, remember reading on textbooks. Now I actually get to maintain relationships with them and present with them at conferences. And it's just mind-blowing. I have a small role in pharmacovigilance as well. When there's an adverse event that's reported, I ensure that it's reported to the appropriate authorities while also providing client support. I develop and help review marketing material to ensure medical accuracy and that it doesn't overstep any regulatory boundaries. I also do customer consultation. So I don't deal directly with pet owners for the majority of my job, but mainly I will, one part of the job that I do enjoy is actually speaking with veterinarians in general practice and discussing cases, how our products might be helpful, kind of giving them other options maybe they haven't considered. I also provide technical resources to some of our veterinarians that called in. Sometimes they may not be aware because I spend so long reading about, for example, hypertension, feline hypertension. I may be aware of some resources that they are not aware of. So I love being able to provide them with resources to help them. My current employment was stated to be 50% home office based and 50% travel. At this point, I am nowhere near 50% travel just because in Canada, we've had quite a few restrictions and a lot of clinics are still doing curbside. I'm hoping to be able to travel more in the new year, but we'll see how things go with the current situation. But the ability to work from home has been amazing for my work-life balance, and the travel has been great for someone like me who always likes to kind of move around and see new places. Opportunities that this job has provided me have been endless. Again, developing relationships with other veterinarians, networking. I've been able to present at conferences as I'm considered a subject matter expert on what our products treat. I've been able to collaborate with KOLs at presentations and currently working on a few publications. If I have a certain research project idea that is relevant to what we are doing, I can usually find a way to secure funding and then run it. But also, this has been a great opportunity to help me continue to develop soft skills, such as management, emotional intelligence, and public speaking. And most companies really want you to develop as an individual. So I do have opportunities presented to me to improve at these skills. So that's been absolutely phenomenal. Advice for getting into this field is definitely networking. Again, the dirty word. Networking almost has negative connotations, but it's really just a matter of putting yourself out there, making sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date, making sure your resume, like Dr. Millen mentioned, is a living resume. You should always be updating it with anything you do. If you're part of a panel, if you're part of a working group, add it to that. Networking when you're at conferences, speak to the technical services veterinarians. A lot of times there are positions available and you might not just have come across them yet. And also I find that following certain individuals that work for companies you might be interested, sometimes they tend to advertise certain job postings. And funny enough, a lot of opportunities now I'm seeing on social media. So there are certain Facebook groups, mainly containing a lot of veterinarians that are involved in non-clinical practice, such as industry or government, that will often put up job postings. One of them, for example, is the DVM project. This may be more Canadian-based, but it often has really great information for veterinarians who are looking to step out of clinical practice. So overall, becoming a technical services veterinarian has allowed me to continue developing my skills, learning a lot more, developing my soft skills, and really gives me the opportunity to keep progressing or advancing my career, which I didn't see happening where I was in clinical practice. Finally, a little bit about me. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to get out of clinical practice is I was doing clinical practice and research at the same time. It was a very, very busy life. Going into industry allowed me to have a better work-life balance. There are some things that happen after hours, but the vast majority of it is during normal working hours. And because of this, I'm able to spend more time with my family, more time with my little one, and spend a lot more time with her than I did in my prior role. I did have a lot of reluctancy to leave clinical practice. I think a lot of people kind of, or at least I did, grew up thinking that they were going to be clinical veterinarians. And I knew deep down inside that being a veterinarian was so much more than that, but I still had some reluctancy to leave. I found that speaking to people in industry, such as maybe attending this talk or just speaking to people at conferences, allowed me to realize that I am still helping animals, just in bigger numbers, and I'm helping vets help animals, and it is so incredibly rewarding. And for those of us who are still maybe doubtful, I still find ways to dip kind of my toes into clinical practice. I do about one shift a month at my old practice, and I do some volunteering at the TNR clinics. I am more than happy to have anybody reach out to me if you have any questions, if there's anything you're interested in, you want to talk about, even collaborations. This is a great way to network, and I will help as much as possible. But really keep your options open, talk to people, and just keep your eyes open. It's amazing the opportunities that come up.
Wonderful, Dr. Prost. I know we said that we were going to wait for questions at the very end, but because it's specific to your talk, we do have a question. Someone is interested in the types or kinds of products that you work with SIVA to offer to the veterinary field.
Absolutely. So mine might be a little bit different. I'm not sure where Carmen is located. SIVA Canada essentially has a companion animal branch, which is the one I work in. We deal with a lot of dermatological products such as Duxo S3. The ones we are best known for in the behavior space would be Filiway and Adaptil. We are soon launching a feline hypertension medication. We've got joint supplements, The American SIVA team has a much broader range of products, including dewormers, parasiticides, pain relievers. We also have a ruminant and poultry and swine divisions that also have vaccines. I know in Canada we have autogenous vaccines, which is something just absolutely amazing on its own. So we typically treat most animals that you might come across in daily clinical practice.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Fran Rotondo.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Eric, and thank you, Dr. Prost and Dr. Miller and Dr. Cochran. It's hard to go last in these things. Okay, so I'll share a little bit about me. I'm going to look at my time. I don't want to go over my 10 minutes, so there's a few slides I might skip over depending on the time, but that's me, and that's me with my one-eyed cat, Floyd. And I am a veterinarian that studied at Ontario Veterinary College. Yeah, so that's our school crest. So I graduated from the Ontario Veterinary College in 1998. That's here in Ontario, in Guelph, where I live. And I got accredited with the ACVPM just earlier this year in 2021. So very happy to have done that. And I do a lot of extracurricular things as well, which when they pop up here, we'll see. I do like to keep busy. I have a lot of extra interest, mostly in music. So yeah, so that's me. I live with too many cats, 5 cats. One of them is sleeping up there on the windowsill, and that's and a husband. And I do moonlight in a rock and roll cover band. That's my fun extracurricular thing. And I work currently with Boehringer Ingelheim. I'm a technical service veterinarian. And a lot of the job kind of details are very similar to what Dr. Prost talked about. So I do work in the pet division. And I was previously a tech service vet with Marielle, which was purchased or acquired by Boehringer. And thankfully, my years at Marielle were counted. So I celebrated my 10-year anniversary with Marielle / Boehringer Ingelheim in November. You click again to advance, which is a milestone for me because my previous tech service roles were with Wyeth. That got bought by Pfizer, and then I went from Pfizer to Marielle. So it's so exciting to actually celebrate a 10-year milestone with one company. And then prior to entering industry, I did practice for almost 10 years in a small animal clinical practice in Ontario. So I do live in Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, in Guelph. And the head office for our company is in Burlington, Ontario. I don't spend time at the office. And if you click again, it'll show my territory that I look after, basically, and look after the territory managers or the sales representatives are in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Southwestern Ontario. So if you just click through, so that's usually the area I work in. It hasn't been like that with the pandemic. So if you click through to the next slide, so with Boehringer Ingelheim, I support the sales team, and I have a team of 8 sales representatives that service Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Southwestern Ontario. So I train them on any product details, make sure that they know all the technical details of the products that they're talking to veterinarians about in the clinics. I also offer clinic support and education, continuing education, seminars and sessions. Also, as tech services, you also support your internal customers. So your internal customers are the marketing team. So developing marketing materials, making sure that they're all technically sound. We assist customer care and pharmacovigilance as well. So it's the reporting of any adverse events. So when I obtained my diplomate status, that actually gave me a different title at work. Sorry, my cat Minnie wants to visit. So I actually got a specialist title now, which was really nice to be recognized like that by the company. And not that I did it for a salary change, but I got a little bump. So I think Dr. Cochran mentioned earlier, it is really beneficial to have those extra credentials as much as you can. So if you advance. I do also volunteer work. This is kind of how I keep my kind of foot in things. Previously, I've been on different boards like veterinary associations, like Ontario Veterinary Medical Association, the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association. I think that's always a great way just to be active in your community. Currently, I'm with this new not-for-profit group called Reimagine Agriculture, so it's quite different than anything I've been with before. And I also, like Dr. Prost said, I do try to keep my hands sometimes in clinical medicine by volunteering. So we have community outreach programs run out of the Ontario Veterinary College. So I'll volunteer there as well, like as needed, helping the students in their spay-neuter programs, for instance. So usually I'm on the road a lot. You can click through and show my whole team here. So there's Minnie, who I'm holding right now. But so usually my job would be 50% on the road, 50% away from home, and 50% at home in my home office. The pandemic has changed that. So for the last almost 2 years, this has been my team. My cats were not that helpful, but they like to make sure I'm on top of things. I do hope to get back to traveling, because for me, that's a huge part of what I really love about working in industry and working as a technical service veterinarian. I really enjoy traveling to other cities, other provinces, seeing different clinics and meeting all the teams in person, meeting veterinarians and technicians. So I've really missed that aspect of it. So it's all been virtual right now. And like Dr. Prost said, in Ontario, we've had quite a lot of restrictions. So there's very little clinic visits going on right now. Everything's still virtual. So I'm hoping that we can get back to traveling again. I will miss my kitty cats dearly, of course, but I do want to get back on the planes and traveling again. So being a tech, that title is very faint. It says opportunities in the veterinary industry. So there's a lot of different ways you can be involved in the veterinary industry. So one of the obvious ones is being involved in the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmaceutical companies and biological manufacturers like vaccines. And then the other one is pet food companies. Those are probably the two main ones that employ a lot of the tech service vets in Canada anyways. But there's also other avenues like laboratory services, working with IDEX or Antech. There's also practice management. That's another avenue you could go down. Also pet insurance is another kind of little facet of industry, and other companies, right? Medical equipment, microchip companies, imaging equipment, and then also doing CE provision. For instance, working with Communivet, they have a couple of veterinarians on their staff. So there's so many opportunities. Like there's a lot of different places you can go with this. Okay, next slide. So the others touched on this as well. It's really, when you think of leaving private practice and going into industry, it's really more of a big picture kind of situation, big picture challenges, big picture solutions. So instead of helping one animal or helping just the pets that come to your specific clinic, now you're helping hundreds or thousands of animals and their caregivers. So it really, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. I like to know that I'm actually influencing more than just one clinic in my little city that I'm practicing in. Also, as a tech service, that you have a fair degree of autonomy and self-direction. We manage our time. We plan our when we're traveling. We plan that. We plan around our home office duties and things like that. So it's a work environment that you have control of, really, for the most part. So travel, I mentioned already. There's a lot of learning, a lot of continuing education that you could do. There is never a problem getting the hours, the credits we need for our getting our license renewed every year, because there are just so many opportunities for learning. Really, our job is to know stuff, right? We have to be the experts on our products, and the diseases that our products treat. So there is a lot of continuous learning with these positions. And in general, there are higher salaries, and there are a lot of benefits, a lot of perks to being an industry veterinarian versus working in a smaller clinic. So there's I guess 4 major groups of entry-level categories for veterinarians in industry. And I'm not going to touch on all of them specifically because of time, but basically you could go into R&D, research and development, and regulatory affairs. Those that group looks after bringing new drugs to market and doing all the clinical trials. Then there's technical services, which is what I do. Marketing and sales, and we mix a little bit in there because we do help marketing and sales. And then there's animal care, like laboratory animal medicine, for instance. So with technical services, it's really about the post-licensing product support. So we support the products that are already in the market, already being sold and purchased by the company. So that's really what we're doing there. And we have to be experts at our products and the diseases and solutions they bring. Technical support and training is a big part of what we do. So for our own people and also for the veterinarians in clinic and their staff. Post-licensing studies are sometimes things technical services can be involved in for label extensions, for instance. And then case care and management. We do a lot of this consultation over the phone, mostly with clinics. For instance, working with a diabetic patient that's poorly managed, we will work with them on that case and do some troubleshooting and try to figure out ways we can get better management of that case. There's a lot of key opinion leader interactions that we do in relationship building. We're basically the liaison between our company and the KOLs. And then any marketing piece that leaves and goes into the hands of our customers has to be reviewed by technical services. They need to be technically sound, of course. So ideally, the background, you definitely need a clinical background. They're always going to look for that. So they're always going to look for somebody that has at least 2 to 3 years of private practice, of clinical practice, before going into industry. And any postgraduate training, specialty of any kind, masters, PhDs, accreditation with different colleges is always a bonus. And then there is moderate travel commitment, especially in the before times, and not right now, but hopefully we'll get back to that because I really do love that part of it. So veterinarians we make up a small percentage in Canada, I believe. I can't remember. I think it's a small number. There's like 20% of veterinarians in Canada are in industry in some way. So it's a small number of us, but we're very important in industry, and companies that have veterinary products, they do need veterinarians on staff, just like human medical companies have MDs on staff. So the insight that veterinarians bring to the table are really important for that organization to help them understand veterinarians and the veterinary business, because a lot of the people in marketing and sales are not veterinarians, right? So they really rely on us to bring that view to them of the business, of the brands that are what's important when it comes to a brand, what the competition out there is, what's important to the patients and the pet parents. So a lot of the company decisions and direction and strategy planning, the veterinarians are really important in making those decisions and coming up with these plans. The experience in practice is is necessary as well, because that also now you have experience with the products that the company sells and also competitor products. So that experience is really essential to have an industry position. And also they want people that have a passion, right, for veterinary medicine, a passion for the veterinary industry in general. And then also when you have that veterinarians, of course, for a company, they want veterinarians on staff. They want people that are highly regarded, right, by their peers and by the veterinarians in practice. So it is really important to have veterinarians in place there. So yeah, so you can click through these. I mean, there's a lot of skills that you already have. As veterinarians, you have a lot of these skills already. So, you know, that technical knowledge, industry knowledge of the veterinary industry in general, the ability for influencing, and you do that all the time. If you're in practice, you're constantly influencing pet owners and negotiating with them and trying to come up with solutions. And analytics, decision-making, these are things veterinarians have to do every single day, right? As scientists, we're doing this all the time. Managing people, managing yourself, you know, supporting the training of others, which we're constantly doing, whether it doesn't matter what field you're in as a veterinarian, you are initiating the training of others all the time. Organization, self-motivation, these are all things that I think are already part of what we do as veterinarians, right? So you'll find that a lot of the things that you need to be an industry veterinarian, you already have them. So, you know, how to get there, right? So depending on what you're interested in, if you're interested in research and development versus getting into a tech service role, again, like I mentioned with tech services, you do want to have a minimum of, you know, 2 to 5 years in clinical practice. It doesn't hurt to have extra degrees. Networking, I agree with Karen, it's huge. That's how I got where I am, by networking, by putting it out there that I'm looking for a change. Then people hear about that, and, you know, getting my LinkedIn profile up to date. So it's very important to talk to other veterinarians that are in industry at the conferences, which we haven't gone to in person in a while, but it's so important to just go up and talk to them and find out, you know, what it's all about and how do I get a foot in the door. And so just participating in those things, being comfortable with public speaking is a really big part of things. And that gets you out of your comfort zone too. Just go up and talk to people as much as you can that work for these companies. So in summary, I mean, find something you're passionate about, right? What you want to be excited about. I love pharmaceuticals. I like that industry. So I've kind of stuck with that one. But there's a lot of different places you could go, whether it's nutrition or diagnostics. Networking, again, so important. Get involved in your local veterinary associations. That will help you meet people, learn about opportunities. Keep learning all the time, which everybody on this call is probably learning something new every day, which is great. So that never stops. Perseverance, and a touch of stubbornness, because even if you don't have all the credentials that they're looking for, like Dr. Prost said, she didn't have industry experience when she started, and neither did I. But you have to start somewhere, and eventually it's a little bit of luck too, right? Because if they like you just enough, even if you don't have that industry experience, they're going to give you a chance to give you that first industry experience. So don't give up. Apply to those jobs, even if you don't think you have everything you're looking for. So be confident in your knowledge and ability. And I love the phrase, fake it till you make it. And that's a lot of it. And that's all of that confidence. Like, yeah, I can do this. I could totally be a technical service vet, even though I don't have that experience yet. I think that can take you through a lot of things in life, and getting out of your comfort zone and just going for it. Just go for what you want. And I think my next slide has my contact info. So it's my email and my phone number. So please, don't hesitate. If you want to talk to me more about anything, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Dr. Rotondo. We do have one question specifically for you. Whether you feel that companies take into consideration clinical and research experience prior to or during veterinary school, or is postgraduate work more important?
I don't think it matters when that was done. I think if you have that experience, even if it's prior to getting your, doctor of veterinary medicine degree, I don't think that hurts at all. It's just having that extra master's or that postgrad work or PhD. I think all of it lends to being a really good candidate for these companies. So I would say, it doesn't matter when it happens, that it's still very good experience to have.
Excellent. A couple more questions if I think we have the time. And I believe you touched on this, Dr. Rotondo, so I will go to a couple of the other speakers. Dr. Mo Solomon asks, first of all, he gives a compliment, great presentations, very diversified jobs and opportunities. His question to all the speakers is how much the certification by ACVPM as diplomates has helped or supported your current technical skills in promoting you for your current jobs.
Sure, yeah. So yes, like I kind of mentioned a little bit, a lot of what we do as tech service veterinarians, just in the industry alone, we're frequently providing advice. A lot of us contribute articles in various journals or industry magazines, and having that sort of, the extra credentials on the backside of your name provides a significant bit of weight as to your legitimacy, to good, bad, or indifferent. The other nice thing about that diplomate status is going through that process. As some of the others have mentioned, you do actually do a fair bit of networking and get to know some various folks. So, that also adds an extra aspect to it. And then the military is often very generous to us when it comes to veterinarians with extra credentials. There's a little bit of a bump that you get for those extra credentials. That also opens up a few extra doors for you as far as changing your role from the food safety, food security side and being able to look more on the preventive medicine side.
Excellent. Dr. Miller, did you have anything to add to that question?
I do. I want to say something after having been out for a few decades. When you're trying to make a career change, you may either feel like or actually look a little stale. And adding the certification opened a lot of doors. If you do go into industry, you will probably be surrounded by people with numerous alphabet soup suffixes following their names. It does help to be one of them. I work with a lot of physicians, and there's a corresponding American College of Preventive Medicine. And hey, the docs understand that, and they know exactly what I am because they either are certified in preventive medicine themselves or they've worked with some physicians who were. That does help. And in my experience, some employers are generous enough to add a significant professional pay above the base salary. Some don't. So it's not only monetary, a lot of it's really personal satisfaction and spreading your wings a bit to fit into a new group.
Excellent. You have anything to add, Dr. Prost?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it was a requirement to get into my current position. A lot of my American colleagues do not have any sort of board certification. We do have a behaviorist who's double boarded, but not everybody is. So I don't think it was necessary for me to get the job, but I certainly think it helped distinguish me compared to the other resumes. And like Dr. Miller said, when you are giving advice or when you're speaking at conferences, it does give a little bit more weight to your name. So I think it's very beneficial to this career path.
All right. Fantastic. And Dr. Rotondo, I know you had mentioned your recent newly boarded diplomate. Did you have any comments with regard to ACVPM diplomate status?
Yeah, it wasn't a requirement for me either to have that for the job. It was something that I wanted to personally pursue. My company was so supportive because they really actually now, since the time I've been hired, they do ask that when they put out the job posting for a tech service vet, they do ask that they have another specialty, that they are a specialist in some respect. So I'm happy I did it, because when that posting went out, I was like, wow, I wouldn't even get this job today because I don't have extra letters behind my name. So they were extremely supportive, because they do want tech service vets that have a specialty that can be considered experts in their field. So I think it is. I think it was beneficial, and they've recognized it really nicely. So I think it's been a huge benefit for me. And I was typing in an answer to Carmen, but I might as well just answer it. She was asking if she think about having a PhD will limit what your research was in. I'll have everybody else say something too, but I don't think so. I think the fact that you did a PhD, whatever it was in, like you showed that drive and dedication and that time required to do such a daunting thing. So I don't think you'd be restricted to like what your PhD was in. I think the fact that you embarked on a PhD and completed it, that I think that speaks volumes about your abilities. So I don't think that would limit you in applying for a job in a biopharmaceutical company, for instance.
Any of the other panelists have any thoughts on a PhD, whether it will limit you or will it open doors?
I think it definitely doesn't limit you. It certainly lends more weight behind you being a subject matter expert. If anything, it may give you sort of a leg up on some of those R&D type positions that are a little bit more specific, a little bit more research heavy, that you are sort of demonstrating your ability to think critically in that environment. And so it gives you a little bit more of a head start on some other folks that may be looking at that R&D side of things. As far as the livestock side of industry, there's not a lot of PhD DVMs. Most of the PhDs that you're going to run into on the livestock side, they're mostly nutritionists. But they definitely are experts in their field, which is why they have that PhD. So, they definitely are well respected. And that does, I wouldn't say it limits you in any way at all.
Dr. Prost or Dr. Miller, did you have anything to add?
That's Dr. Miller. I do believe that any extra degree is generally a good thing. And that ties into that ability to tweak your CV or your resume. You can use more lines about that PhD work in your relevant publications or less, depending on what job you're after, and that kind of relates to the question in chat in the question answer about, is your clinical research experience prior to and during veterinary school okay, or is postgraduate work more important? I think as long as you're listed as an author, it's helpful, So I would say as long as you have been among the listed authors on a research paper or two that was published in a peer-reviewed journal, that's a good thing, no matter when it occurred in your career.
I agree. And I'm aware of a few folks in my company who are in R&D who have a PhD in something completely unrelated to what their current position is. So I don't think it limits in any sort of way.
Okay, and I'm going to do one final question with regard to an individual asked whether, is there a point where it's too late to make a change from clinical practice to industry? Individual's a 1996 graduate that's been in clinical practice since graduation. Have I missed the boat? Dr. Rotondo typed in the answer, never too late. If that's something you want to do it. My guess, having listened to these three panelists, every one of them would say the same thing as Dr. Rotondo. Does anybody have any comments with regard to, is it too late?
And this Dr. Miller, I went from 1992 to 2006, so that's a significant amount of time. And it was a little difficult to sit down and crack some textbooks again, but otherwise, no barriers.
And one of your fellow attendees just says, I work in federal government. I've seen many vets come to this career after 25 years in private practice. They hit the ground running and are doing great. Just my 2 cents. So if you have a passion for something different than what you're doing, you got to go after that passion would be my recommendation. Okay, there's one last question with regard to, can you explain the process to become a diplomate at the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine? I don't believe we have time for that discussion, but Dr. Brown, I will send you an email. I've got your email address from the registration. And when I send out the announcement with regard to recordings and slides, I will send out a little blurb to everybody about becoming a diplomate in the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine. So with that, I want to thank all the panelists. It was a very engaging evening. I want to, before I turn it over to Dr. Vole for any last comments, I want to wish everybody a happy holidays and, be safe out there. Dr. Vole?
Thanks, Dr. Turing. I just want to reiterate that thank you to our panelists. That was an excellent presentation by all of you. I know I certainly learned a lot. For any of our attendees, if you have other veterinary career fields you want to hear about, feel free to send an email to that address listed there, the ACVPM partners email. I actually have to check. I'm not sure if that's changing or not. I don't think so. So send an email to that address there. We have such a variety of career options open to us, and we're really trying to highlight those for people that are looking for career changes. And then there is a link there. The acvpm.org website has some information, like Dr. Turing mentioned, on becoming certified. So he's going to send out the information as well, but you can also check the website. But thank you again to everyone who joined us and panelists. Really appreciate having you all on here tonight.
Happy holidays, everyone. And
Thanks,
again, thank you, panelists.